Kenyan-born nurse based in the U.S. has pleaded guilty in connection with the 12 billion shillings home healthcare fraud scheme.
In a Boston courtroom, the final chapter of a long and audacious crime unfolded. Faith Newton, a 56-year-old Kenyan-born nurse, stood before the judge as her fate was sealed. She had spent years weaving a complex web of fraud, siphoning millions from programs designed to care for society's most vulnerable. But now justice had caught up with her. The sentence was severe but fitting: 12 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, a $250,000 fine, and restitution amounting to an astonishing $99.7 million. The courtroom was still as the weight of the sentence settled. Newton, who had once reveled in a life of luxury, funded by deceit, now faced the stark reality of her actions. The crime began in January 2013, rooted in the operations of Arbor Home Care Services, LLC, a Massachusetts-based home health care agency. Newton, alongside her co-conspirator, 42-year-old Winnie Waruru, masterminded a scheme that would span 4 years, draining over $100 million from Mass Health and Medicare. It was a systematic and coldly calculated operation. They billed for services that were never provided, submitting falsified notes to cover non-existent home visits. Patients were recruited through illegal financial incentives, regardless of whether they actually required medical care. Unqualified workers were hired, and fake certification documents were created to hide the reality that many home health aides had no training. Physicians were pressured to sign off on fraudulent plans of care, unknowingly approving services that were either unnecessary or fabricated entirely. Newton wasn't just orchestrating a fraud, she was building an empire on the backs of the vulnerable. The stolen funds fueled a life of extravagance, luxury items like cars, high-end real estate, and the trappings of wealth. But in 2017, the scheme began to unravel. Mass Health cut off Arbor's funding, sending Newton into a panic. In one final act of deceit, she withdrew $2 million, disguising it as backdated Christmas bonuses for herself and her husband. It was a desperate move, but it was too late. The investigation was closing in. By February 2021, the arrests were made. Newton and Waruru were charged with conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, conspiracy to pay and receive kickbacks, making false statements, and money laundering. Waruru, perhaps recognizing the strength of the evidence against her, pleaded guilty in September 2022. She admitted to aiding and abetting healthcare fraud, receiving illegal kickbacks, and falsifying statements. Her sentencing is yet to be scheduled, but she faces up to 15 years behind bars. Newton, however, denied everything. She pleaded not guilty, insisting on her innocence, but the evidence told another story. By July 2024, she was convicted on multiple counts, though she managed to avoid conviction on one charge of money laundering conspiracy. As the trial unfolded, a deeper layer of the story emerged. Newton wasn't just facing the downfall of her own criminal empire, she was also connected to another massive fraud. She was the wife of Francis Nderitu Kamaru, a Kenyan businessman arrested in 2016 for orchestrating his own fraudulent scheme. Kamaru's company, Compassionate Home Care, Inc., had filed fake claims under the U.S. Medicaid program, defrauding the government out of $43 million. It was a chilling revelation that suggested fraud ran deep within the family. For Newton, that justice has come. The wealth and privilege she once enjoyed are now replaced by prison walls and the burden of repaying millions. But while her chapter has ended, Waruru's is still unfolding. Her sentencing looms, and questions linger about the broader network of fraud that may still be uncovered. The government's crackdown is far from over, and in the shadows of the healthcare system, the hunt for those who exploit it continues. Considering Newton's ties to her husband's earlier fraud case, do you think this was a family affair or just a coincidence?
Before the long arm of the law caught up with them, 41-year-old Winnie Waruru and 52-year-old Faith Newton were living large in Massachusetts, USA. Newton is said to be driving a Maserati, a luxurious brand car, and owns 5 mansions worth millions of US dollars